Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to our live stream today. If I can get a confirmation in the chat that the sound is okay, that would be terrific and we can start. So I'm just waiting for some confirmations and okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marek. I will be the host of today's webinar, and let's go through today's agenda. So, starting off, I'll do a quick introduction of UX Week for anyone who's not familiar with us yet. Then we will have a great presentation about the Adaptable Researcher, a guide to thriving anywhere by our guest of this webinar, Reggie Murphy. And then we will have a Q&A at the end. So please make sure to use the QR code you can see right now to ask questions using our Slido. And let's move to the introduction of UX Week. So for those who do not know us yet, UX Week is a all-around UX research platform, which also allows you to recruit participants for your studies. You can you can conduct studies on all steps of UX research, starting over the card sorting, tree testing, all the way through surveys, preference tests, to the prototype testing, other usability tests, and also live interviews. What we can also do for you is recruiting, because each good study requires a accurate user profile. So if you want to recruit for any of these study types, you can do that with our user panel. We guarantee the quality of the participants. You can recruit for any study type that we offer. We have basically a whole world covered, and we take pride in providing fair incentives to our participants. With UX Week, you can recruit, conduct, analyze, and share UX research all in one place. What I also wanted to mention real quick is that our team recently released a follow-up on our previous AI survey that we did back in 2023. Right now, we surveyed 9 leading UX researchers, including voices from Nielsen Norman Group, other senior industry consultants, and UX leaders. What we asked and what we focus on is how the conversation shifted throughout the 2 years from will AI replace us to how do we use it strategically. The report includes real workflows, practical recommendations, and honest predictions about where we are headed. If you are navigating AI adoption in your UX practice, this gives you a roadmap from people who are already doing it. You can find the whole report linked in the description, so please make sure to check it out. And as I already mentioned, we have a Slido available, so please make sure to use this QR code and ask any questions throughout the presentation. We will make sure to go through those in the Q&A. You can also use our code UXTweak at Slido to make sure you can ask the questions there. And that would be it from my side for the beginning. And now let's introduce our guest of today. Hi, Reggie. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
How you been?
Well, I've been doing very well. It's almost Friday.
Almost
Well,
Friday
it's
is
actually
my
Friday in some
favorite
places around the
time.
world.
Yeah. So, Reggie, you join us as a leader of global UX research team at Zendesk. That's what you are up to right now.
Yes.
But it certainly is not the only thing that you have in your resume. Before that, you also work for Meta, Twitter, Vanguard, and other companies. So I think I can speak for anyone joining us today that we will listen to some seriously experienced words today, and we are looking forward to it. So,
All right.
Reggie, The stage is yours. You can start whenever you feel like.
Okay. All right. Just let me know when we're switching to
Yeah,
the
I'm switching now, so you can start.
perfect. All right. All right. Hey, everyone. I have a question for you. Have you ever looked at a job posting in a completely different industry and you thought, no, I could never do that. I don't know. I don't know their business. No, no, that's not for me. Well, look, by the time we finish this webinar, that self-doubt that you might feel when you see that job posting, I guarantee you it's going to go away because you're going to learn the playbook that top researchers and research leaders use to make career pivots look effortless. Whether you're jumping from tech to finance or from startups to an agency, or maybe you're going from healthcare to retail, you're going to leave this presentation with 3 specific hacks that you can use right now. And I'm talking theory, and I'm not talking like something that you can use 5 years from now. I'm talking about tools you can use today, tools that you can deploy the moment that you start interviewing for that role that you've been eyeing. You're going to leave this webinar truly believing, and I mean that, truly believing that you're not stuck in your vertical. You're not locked into one industry forever. And your research skills, yeah, they travel. And you're about to learn exactly how to make them work anywhere. All right. Are you ready? All right. Let's dive in. All right. Now, how many of you have ever felt like this? You're scrolling around on LinkedIn or some other job board and you see that perfect job posting. You go, yeah, that sounds amazing. I like that company's doing really interesting work. But then you get to that one line that says, experience in X industry required or strongly preferred. And then you think, oh, I don't know. I guess that rules me out. Really, have you ever felt like that? I mean, I know what that feels like. I have been there too. I mean, after transitioning from a very large media company, then to a consulting agency, and then to large tech companies, I mean, I've been there. I have felt that feeling. And I'm here to tell you today that that feeling is lying to you because, here's what I've learned after many years of coaching researchers and then making my own pivots, 25 years now. The best researchers aren't the ones who know everything about one industry. No, the most successful researchers I know are the ones who know how to learn anything about any industry and do it fast. So I want to let you in on a secret right now before we go any further that hiring managers, they're not going to share this with you. When they say that industry experience is required or preferred, what they really mean is we need somebody to hit the ground running. We need someone who just understands our problems right now. What they mean is we need someone who won't take 6 months to figure out how we actually get stuff done here. Like, and here's the thing, you don't need 5 years in their industry to do that. You just need to know how to adapt quickly. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And you're not going to learn just how to adapt. You're going to learn how to thrive because there's a huge difference between just surviving a career transition that you're trying to make and actually crushing it. Now, to prepare for this talk, I reached out to a number of some of my colleagues, former colleagues, some of the best researchers, most successful researchers I know. And I asked them one question. I asked them to share 1 or 2 tips, advice, or hacks to help researchers thrive when they're transitioning or thinking about going into a new space. And let me tell you, what they shared with me was profound. And I really appreciate them allowing me to share some of their stories with you today. Now, I've summarized some of my experiences and their tips into 3 core hacks, what you see on the screen right now. And these hacks are going to help you thrive in any new environment as a researcher. And, this could also work, I believe, even if you're a designer or a product manager or maybe some other adjacent discipline as well. Excuse me. So the first hack, how to build influence fast. Even when you're the new person, you don't know all the acronyms or what's going on in the 500 Slack channels that you've been invited to. That's the first hack, how to build influence fast. And the second is you'll learn how to speak the language of your new stakeholders, whether they're engineers, executives, creatives, or even compliance officers. We're going to talk about that. And third, you're going to hear some tips on how to learn a new business quickly and adapt your storytelling so that your insights land on target. Now, as I said before, these aren't theories. I'm going to share with you battle tested strategies from real researchers doing real work who've had very successful careers and who've made successful major career pivots and industry jumps. And I'm going to show you exactly how to use these strategies. All right, so let's start with the first one. Here we go. Now, excuse me. Let's talk about the first 30 days in your new role. You walk in, you don't know the product, you don't know all the team dynamics that's going on, and you're trying to figure out all those new AI features and all the platforms that you now have access to. You're doing all that, and everyone's watching you. They're wondering, who is this person? Can they help us? Now, this moment, these first 30 days, this is a critical window. This is when either you build momentum or you spend this next 6 months trying to catch up. So, how do you build influence when you're starting from zero? Well, let me show you 3 proven strategies. I want to tell you about Ellen. Now, Ellen made one of my colleagues, former colleagues, used to work together, made a massive pivot. She went from a big consulting firm to an in-house researcher role at a cruise line, at a cruise company. Now, talking about jumping into the deep end. Okay, maybe that works better in person, but it was just right there. I had to do it. Okay, here's what she told me. She said, when I joined this cruise company, I had never been on a cruise before. I was like, what? She said, I was joining a team of cruise super fans. I mean, people who lived and breathed cruising. She said she felt so behind, but then it was something she realized. She realized something powerful. Her not knowing not knowing about cruise lines was actually her superpower. You only get to experience something for the first time once, and that beginner's perspective, oh man, that's gold. So while her teammates had stopped noticing things, because they had seen it 1,000 times, Ellen was asking questions that no one thought to ask anymore. She was noticing those friction points that cruise veterans had become blind to. Your outsider status isn't a weakness. Please understand it. It's your secret weapon. So when you're in a new industry and you see things differently, you question assumptions that everyone else has pretty much accepted. You bring fresh eyes to old problems. So here's the hack: use your first time lens strategically. In those first 30 days, document everything that confuses you. I mean, every acronym that gives you pause. You say, what is that? Every process that just seems unnecessarily complicated. I mean, every moment that you think, wait, what? Wait, how does that work? Why do they do it that way? Because those confusions, if I can use that word that way, those confusions, they're not just your learning curve, they're insights. Yeah, they're the exact friction points that your users and customers are probably feeling too. Now, here's the second strategy for building influence fast. Here's what I want you to do. Don't wait until you feel ready. Jump in. Now, Ellen, again, told me another experience that she had when she joined a very large retail tech company. And she said, 2 weeks in, they needed me to run a design sprint. They're like, hey, can you do this? And she was like, sure. And she jumped in. She said, I didn't know the platform yet, but I used this project as my onboarding. She made her own kickoff docs to get grounded. And then she used customer interviews as her crash course on the business. And here's what happened. Everyone else, was spending weeks on onboarding and training. Ellen was delivering value. Now, I'm pretty sure she did finish that onboarding because it was required. But you see what she did? She used a project as her onboarding. You should do the same. Like, excuse me, don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you feel 100% ready, because let me tell you, here's the truth. You're never going to feel 100% ready. But the act of doing the work, like that's what makes you ready. So, when you run that first project, even if it's small, you'll learn faster than any training program can ever teach you. You'll meet stakeholders, you'll learn the product, you'll understand the business priorities, and most importantly, you'll prove your value immediately. That's what Ellen did. And I've changed my mind about this. I previously thought that, a gradual ramp up is the best approach when you start somewhere, especially for junior researchers. I no longer think that. I think finding that first project quickly, even if it's really small, like that's the best way to go. So find that first project, volunteer for it, even if it scares you a little bit. And I mean, especially if it scares you a little bit. Now, I'm going to tell you about Kim, one of my colleagues, awesome researcher, very successful. She pivoted from a large government agency here in the US. She pivoted from there to a computer chip manufacturer, and then to social media, and then back to another big tech company. Man, major pivots across her career already. And she told me something brilliant. She said, everyone has imposter syndrome, not just you. Everyone. They hired you because they believe that you can do the job. So ask every question. And this is your window to get away with it. So this is strategy number 3 for building influence fast. She also told me this gem of a story. She said, one time, the first week I had joined a company, I sent a meeting request to the chief product officer, the CPO. And everyone was asking me, how did you get that meeting? And she said, I just sent the request. I could always play the I am new here card if anyone, questioned it. Great story, huh? So here's the advice. Play the I am new here card until it's going out of style, because you know what? It is. You have maybe 60, maybe 90 days where you can still say, I'm still learning. And that's an acceptable excuse for just about anything. So you got to use it. Send that meeting request to the executive that you want to learn something from. What's the worst they can say? Hey, they're busy, maybe next quarter, but they will meet with you. You just send a request. Ask that engineer to explain the architecture to you like you're 5 years old. Request that someone walk you through a process that everyone assumes that you already know. Here's what happens when you ask what you think are dumb questions early. One, you actually learn faster. And two, you often uncover problems that, everyone else has just accepted. And three, and this is the critical one, you signal to your team that you're not there faking it, right? You're here to understand deeply so that you can contribute meaningfully. And let me tell you something, that builds trust way faster than pretending you already know everything. Now, this is a strategy. Let's go to strategy number 3. All right, here we go. That was strategy number 3. All right, I'm moving now to my recap. Building influence fast. So you first use your first time lens. Document everything that confuses you. Even if it's confusing you, it's probably confusing other people too. Jump into work early. Don't wait until you feel ready. Use that first project as your real onboarding. And then third, ask every single question. You have a limited window to do this, 30, 60, maybe 90 days max, where you can say, I am new. That is your superpower. You don't want to waste it. Now, doing these 3 things won't just help you survive a transition. You'll build influence faster than people who've been there for years. All right. So that's hack number 1, building influence fast. Let's go now to hack number 2. Now, let's talk about one of the most underrated skills in research, translation. Now, I'm not talking about literal translation. I'm talking about the ability to take the same insight and speak about it in a way that lands with completely different audiences. So here's what I've learned over the years is like the fastest way to lose influence is to speak researchese. You know what I'm talking about? Speaking researchese to people who don't speak researchese. Those moments when you are presenting your findings and you see people's eyes glaze over. You're talking about the pain points, you're talking about mental models. Now, I know a lot of PMs like to talk about mental models, but for the most part, when you start talking about mental people's eyes glaze over. They're thinking about OKRs, they're thinking about conversion rates, retention, first time to first value. That's what they're thinking about. Like if you want to thrive in a new environment, especially in a new industry, you have to learn to translate. So when you speak product, you focus on the user journey, end to end user journey, or friction points. When you speak creative, your language must focus on, the emotional experience. And of course, when you talk to executives, you have to talk about, the business impact and ROI. Now, let me show you what this looks like in practice. And this is our first strategy. So let's focus on our whiteboard here a little bit. And here is the research way of saying something. Users find the onboarding flow confusing due to unclear microcopy and lack of progressive disclosure. Did a researcher write that? Sounds like something AI may have written. So now, here's another way. Here's another way to say the same thing. All right, we're losing 30% of new signups in the first 5 minutes because they don't understand what to do next. If we fix this, we could add 2 million ARR in ARR to our company. Same insight, completely different framing. Now, this first version, it just talks about the user problem, and that's important. But this second version, it talks about the business impact. Now, which one do you think lands better in a meeting with your product team or marketing executives? You see, when you are pivoting to a new industry, you have to master this translation. One of my colleagues who leads research for a very large tech company has started pushing his research team to stop using phrases like users want X, customers want X. Instead, he said he's replaced that phrase with more business focused language, such as prioritizing X could lead to Y% higher adoption or Y% increased retention. You see the difference there? Remember, your new stakeholders don't speak user research. They don't. Some might a little bit, but they don't. They speak revenue, efficiency, competitive advantage. As I said before, time to first value. So translate your insights into their language. Now, I have to tell you, this is a great story. I have to tell you about my colleague Theo's pivot. Now, Theo spent 7 years in big tech, working at a number of big tech firms, and he was working with product managers and engineers every day. Then he joined an agency. And so this is a completely different world for him, he told me. He said, my partners aren't product managers and engineers anymore. They're strategists, copywriters, they're creative directors. So they value emotion, narrative, they value cultural context over user flows and conversion metrics. And for him, this required a total language shift. So in tech, Theo would say, users are dropping off at this step in the funnel. Now, at the agency, he learned to say, people need to feel oriented and confident when they commit. So let's give them an emotional anchor point in the creative. You see the difference there? Same insight, different language. Now, Theo wrote a fantastic article on LinkedIn that goes into more detail about this pivot that he made. And it's in this deck, could share it out a little bit later. I totally advise especially if you're transitioning from some other company into an agency, in the agency space, it's a great read. You need to check it out. Now, when you're transitioning industries, you have to pay attention to how your new stakeholders talk. We're researchers. We can do this. You have to observe, read the room. What words do they use? What do they care about? Like, what gets them excited in these meetings that you're in with them? And then this is the key. You translate your research into their language and not yours. Don't make them learn research speak. No, you learn their speak. That is how you become indispensable. All right. Now I'm gonna share with you in this third strategy. I'm gonna talk with you about my friend Paula, who gave me this brilliant hack for speaking the language of a new industry, even before you get the job. All right. So she shared with me that when she was transitioning from the media space into banking and financial services, she would make two lists. She said, okay, list one is going to be transferable skills. So things like questionnaire design or running focus groups, strategic planning, all those things, vendor management. And then list two is the probably not very transferable list. So the stuff that was really specific to that industry, media industry, like evaluating content based on viewer research or choosing on air talent, very media focused list there. And so when she started applying for roles at banking and financial institutions, she focused exclusively on that first list. She rewrote her resume, cover letters, and then she taught herself to talk about those skills in a non-media focused way. And most importantly, she had confidence. She had confidence in her skills. She knew what she was doing. She knew research. She knew how to talk about what she was doing. And she knew that her research skills apply to any business problem. So here's your homework, people. Make those two lists. Like, what are your truly transferable skills? I'm going to give you a hint. It's way more than you think. And, what is truly industry specific? And then you want to practice talking about that list one in a way that has nothing to do with your current industry. That's how you position yourself for any role in any vertical. All right. Here's the recap on hack two, speaking their language. First, as I said, you translate insights into business impact. You don't want to make your stakeholders translate research speak. No, that's not the way to go. Second strategy, you want to learn your audience and then you tailor your presentations and your narratives to speak to that audience. Reminder, creative teams need a different framing than product teams that you're used to if you're working at a tech company. And then you want to position your transferable skills. Your skills are not locked to one industry. You solve business problems. That's what you do. That's what researchers do. Now, master this, and you'll build credibility in any new environment faster than you ever thought possible. All right. Now, let's move on to hack number three. And, this one is going to tie it all together. All right. So we've talked about building influence and building it fast, speaking the right language. Now, none of that matters. None of those two matter if you don't understand the business that you're in. So here's what I've learned, and I'm going to tell you this is going on 25 years here, that you can't be a strategic researcher if you do not understand how the business actually makes money, the business of the company that you're in, how they make money. And I'm not talking about just knowing the flow chart. I mean, the org chart. Got to know the flow chart sometimes. But, knowing the org chart, that's easy. I'm talking about understanding, what problem does this company solve? Who are the customers for whom they're solving this problem? Like, who are they really? What's the business model? What does leadership actually care about? Not just what they say they care about, but what really keeps them up at night. If you don't notice stuff, your research will always feel like nice to have, like it's a nice to have instead of a must have. So, how do you learn a new business fast? Because and then once you do, how do you tell a story in a way that makes people want to work with you, hire you, promote you, and then trust you? All right, let me show you. Now, my colleague Mia, She successfully pivoted from being outside of tech into tech, and now has been at multiple tech companies, super successful. She gave me this tip. She said, every job is trying to solve a particular problem. So, what you want to try to do is try to figure out what the problem, the job that you're looking at is trying to solve, and then tailor your application accordingly. I mean, this is brilliant. Like most people just read the job description and think, "Oh, do I check all these boxes? Can I do this and this and this?" So Mia flips and she says, "No, no, no. What's the problem this company is trying to solve by hiring someone in this role?" So when she applied to a company in the financial sector, she knew that they were trying to become an AI company while dealing with deep regulation. That was the tension, that was the problem they were trying to solve. So she positioned herself as someone who could navigate complex regulated environments while also driving innovation. And then she told me when she applied to a large SaaS company, she knew that B2B research, and everybody work at B2B research, B2B companies knows that B2B research is often difficult because it's, sometimes very hard to reach, the right users or customers. So for her application and interview process, she showed how she'd successfully reached hard to reach populations in her previous roles. I mean, it sounds simple, but a lot of people don't do this. Stop trying to match every single bullet point in a job description. Stop and start trying to understand the problem that they're trying to solve and how you can help them do that. So before you apply, before you interview, ask yourself these questions. What's the business challenge this role exists to address? What's keeping the hiring manager up at night? You know, what does success look like for them? And then position everything you say and write around that problem. Now, Lena has one of my colleagues has one of the most diverse career paths that I've ever seen. She went from like a small wealth management firm to a Fortune 500 consulting firm that where she was conducting research in healthcare, retail, consumer product goods, CPG. And then she went from there to a design agency, then back to big tech. She's made massive pivots for her entire career. And she told me something that I think about constantly now. She said, what truly accelerates learning is connecting with the right people. Relationships, and I'm quoting here, relationships, not reference materials, have been the most powerful accelerators of my growth. Whew, that's powerful right there. I mean, think about it. It's so important. You can read all the Confluence pages you want when you start a company or when you start a new job. You can watch all the onboarding videos. You can study every single strategy deck out there, but nothing, I'm telling you, nothing will teach you the business faster than talking to the right people. It seems obvious, but a lot of people don't do this. So Lena almost turned down a big job offer at a big tech company because she didn't feel like she was ready for the job. But what changed her mind was a manager and a mentor, someone that she deeply admired, someone that she really felt like she could learn from. And so that mentor helped her understand how to have impact, how to navigate the org. She helped her focus her energy where it mattered the most. And that and she was able to elevate way faster that way than any document could ever teach her. So here's the hack. Identify who you want to learn from, not just what you want to learn. So in your first 30 days, don't do the obligatory one-on-one meet and greets, and you just kind of going through the motions. Actually use these meetings and ask people some hard questions. Ask them, what do you wish you'd known when you started here? What's that unwritten rule here that I should know? Who else should I talk to? I mean, these are really good questions. Take notes, follow up, build real relationships. Because here's the truth. You're not trying to figure this out. You're not figuring this out by yourself on your own. You find people who can help you. Now, here's another perspective that I think might even surprise you. Now, remember my friend Ellen, who I told you earlier, who joined a cruise line company. She told me about another experience she had joining a big retail tech company. And this was her first role after many years in consulting. And she said, honestly, and I'm quoting here, honestly, my consulting mindset, that's what saved me. Because in consulting, we'd spend late nights rehearsing sales pitches, even practicing when to land the jokes. I remember that. I spent 3.5 years at a consulting firm myself. That is so true. It was crazy. And she goes on to say, she says, but all that time sharpening storytelling and presentation muscles, she said it made me so much better at turning insights into action. And she talked about how stressful this was, but she said she realized that this wasn't stress. It was training actually, and it was a great preparation for the type of work that sometimes you do in fast-paced tech companies. So whatever industry you're coming from, my advice here: bring that with you. Don't try to erase it. Your weird background is what's going to make you valuable. Like if you came from healthcare, you probably have an insane attention to detail and understanding high stakes decision making. If you're coming from a startup, you probably know how to move fast with incomplete and ambiguous information. If you come from finance, you probably be able to speak the language of risk and ROI better than most researchers ever will. Your different is your superpower. Remember that your different is your superpower. Don't downplay it. Don't apologize for it. And when you're interviewing, when you're joining a new team, or when you're presenting that first research presentation, just own what makes you different and say it out loud. And say, look, I came from X industry, and here's what that taught me that's going to help us out here. That's your story. That's going to be your edge. Now, I want to go back for this second strategy here. I want to go back to something that Lena told me that really stuck with me. She said, adaptability, title of this presentation, it's like a muscle, and you build it through action. So stepping into a new domain is, it's always intimidating. Imposter syndrome, all that. It's intimidating. But the best way to move past that fear is to identify some action that you can take early on and just go for it, even if you don't feel ready. Remember, I tell you, you're never going to feel ready. So you can do things like, read about the new industry, ask questions, sketch out some initial thoughts and hypotheses. Just take that first small action, because every action that you take, what it's going to do, it's going to build momentum. And each action strengthens, by the gift here, strengthens that adaptability muscle. And here's the beautiful part. Every time you successfully navigate to something new, you build proof for yourself. You build that confidence. And it's proof that, hey, you've done this before. It's proof that you've done it before and now you can do it again. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I can do that transition, I don't know, I'm a little apprehensive. Remember, you don't need to know all the answers when you walk through the door your first day. No, all you need is some confidence and the willing to start, and the willingness to find the right people to learn from. Listen, every pivot that you make, every new industry, every new company, a new challenge, it just adds layers to who you are as a researcher. And but your foundation as a researcher is going to remain the same. You're going to continue to grow your skills, but you're going to be learning to apply those skills in new contexts. And the more you do it, of course, the easier it's going to get. Now, we're going to recap hack number 3, learning the business. It's key to understand what problem the role is solving. Now, you don't want to just match keywords when you start looking at job descriptions. Every job solves a business problem. So you want to position yourself as the solution to that. And the second strategy here is to learn through people. not just reading documents. Find mentors, build relationships, people that can help you because you're not alone in this. Relationships accelerate learning faster than anything you can read in any document. And then build that adaptability muscle through actions, small steps forward. Like these small steps, that small things that you can do, it strengthens you for the next challenge. Do this and you just won't survive a transition, you'll own it. Now, let's bring all of this together. We're going to go back to where we started at the beginning of this talk. That feeling, that feeling you get when you see that job description or you see that opportunity and you go, oh, maybe not for me. I don't think I have enough experience. I don't know if I can do that thing because I've been working in this area for 10 years. I want to tell you something. As a researcher and as a research veteran for many, many, many years, you're not stuck. You're not locked into one vertical or one type of company or one industry forever. No, your research skills, they will travel with you. Take them. Your ability to ask the right questions, to synthesize complex information, to uncover insights that drive decision, all those things you do as a researcher, that works in tech, that works in finance, healthcare, retail, all the industries that I've just mentioned, startups, enterprise SaaS. You just need to know how to position yourself, how to adapt, and how to learn fast. And now, bam, you have a playbook. Here it is. 3 simple hacks. They're simple, but hey, these are powerful. Number 1, build influence fast. 2, speak their language. 3, learn the business, and then master your narrative, master your story. These aren't just strategies that are for changing industries. They're just strategies for thriving anywhere. I mean, no matter what the change that comes your way. Because truth be told, we all know this industry is still changing. Change is constant. Companies are going to get acquired. Priorities are going to shift. AI is going to do what AI is going to do. AI is going to be what AI is going to be. Industries are going to evolve around that. But if you master these 3 things, you'll always be valuable no matter where you want to go. You'll always be able to adapt and you'll always be able to thrive. So my question to you as I close out this talk, where do you want to go? What's the industry that you have been afraid to go after or explore? What's that role that you've saved in LinkedIn or some other job board that you've basically talked yourself out of applying for whatever reason? Oh, I'm just not ready. What transition have you been telling yourself that you're not ready for? I want you to think about that right now. And I want you to remember that the researchers who make these transitions look easy, like everybody who I've shared their stories with you today, look, they're not superhuman. No, they just know how to adapt. They know how to build influence fast, even when they're new. They know how to speak the language of their stakeholders, even when it's unfamiliar. And they know how to learn a business quickly and then tell their stories with confidence. And now you can too. You have everything you need. So the only question is what are you going to do with it? So I want to challenge you right now as I end this talk. And this is what I want you to do when you leave the webinar after the Q&A is, number 1, make those 2 lists, the transferable skills and the industry specific stuff. Now you're going to be super shocked at how much is on that transferable skills list. 2, I want you to identify that stretch role, that role that you've been thinking about, but you just haven't had the courage to go after. Write it down. And then 3, find one person in that space. Find that person, maybe it's 2 or 3 people, and reach out to them. See if they'll give you a 15 to 30-minute coffee chat, Zoom chat. Learn from them. And then lastly, start applying these hacks today. Don't wait. Don't wait. And don't wait till you feel ready. You're never going to feel ready. Just start. Start today. developing your adaptability muscle. Because here's what I know to be true, and I say this as a person who's been doing this for a long time. Every single person who is watching this webinar, you already have what it takes to thrive anywhere. You know why I think that way? Because you're sitting right here watching this webinar. You have the skills, you have the curiosity just by showing up and watching this talk. So now you have a playbook. So I want you to go out there and take what you got and make it what you want. I really appreciate your time and attention. Thank you very much. Happy to do the Q&A now.
Okay, so thank you, Reggie. It's been a terrific talk. As also seen in the chat, both on YouTube, LinkedIn, as well as the questions in Slido that we have. So people, please keep them coming. We already have a really nice questions. So starting off, we have a question from Cheryl. It's a question that has been echoed by other questions as well. The larger topic of I am a UX leader and I feel the opposite from what you outlined. I know I could go anywhere. How do we
Okay.
stand out if we are in landing roles with hiring managers? Also, other questions reflected this, such as we have a question where an anonymous asked, "Thank you so much for love the talk. Would love to learn the lens of a recruiter because they are the first pass person. How do we speak their language to get noticed?" So the topic here is how to basically get through the recruiting section.
Okay. So the theme is as you start traversing the job market, how do you break through that
Yeah.
first line with the recruiter? I've seen many strategies, but I think the one that has worked, that I've seen work much more successfully than others in the past, is trying to connect with someone who works at that company that you want to work for and reach out to them and ask them for a 30-minute chat and say, hey, I'm interested in this particular role at your company. I'd appreciate it if you could take some time to talk with me about, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the role unless they're in that team, but just someone who can tell you about the company and someone who you can speak with. I know it's intimidating to reach out to people on LinkedIn. People reach out to me all the time, cold reaching out. And while it's difficult, for research leaders and others, but I generally try to reply back to folks and let them know, hey, if I have some time, I can take with them to speak with them. But like I said before, you won't know unless you ask. Reach out to people inside of the company, get to know them, and then hopefully, as a result of that conversation you have with them, maybe they'll refer you to the job. What I do recommend is don't apply to a job. I probably shouldn't say this, but don't apply to a job cold on LinkedIn. Don't do it. Get referred. Like that's one of the tried and true hacks, eh, for a lot of reasons. Because when you were referred by somebody at the company, sometimes, I'm not saying this happens in all places, but sometimes those those referrals tend to get bubbled up in priority from the recruiter's perspective. I don't know if that works at all places, but I think sometimes it does. So being referred is what you want. But how do you get referred? Well, you got to reach out and connect with someone at the company and develop a relationship with them. It's people talking to people, humans talk. As much AI is happening right now, this is still, we're still human beings in this world. And that's how you get influenced. That's how you can learn. As I had examples in the presentation about that. So I know that's just one big um, strategy, but that's the one that I think can sort of break through that. Because I get it, I understand you're applying for 25 roles, but when that cold apply just gets dropped into an applicant tracking system, and now with so much AI going in and kind of doing the evaluations, sometimes you never know. So you want to get a more, you want to be a more of a warm lead versus a cold lead inside an organization. So I would recommend that. I think If you have a relationship with a recruiter at the company, that's also, if you build a relationship, then that could also help too. So you find out who the recruiter is for the job, and you can do that a little bit in LinkedIn. You can find out, and you just got to do some legwork. People have done people. People do. When you're motivated and you have some tenacity, and it's not like you're being all aggressive about it. It's just that look. I'm just trying to find a way in. And if you stick with it, you got some perseverance, you'll be able to get in and develop those relationships. So, but that's what I would, I know it's a long answer to a very simple question, but that's the one strategy that I think will work to get you beyond the recruiter.
Mhm. And in the end, you have nothing to lose. What is the worst thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the
They,
worst they're going to say?
yeah,
It's like,
they
no, I'm
just
sorry.
decline your connection request. What's the worst thing,
Yeah.
right?
And I know some people, when they post jobs, especially on LinkedIn, they'll say, hey, I'm just posting this job. I'm not part of the team. Please don't DM me. And I get it. You want to be respectful of that. But, they're not the only person that works at that company.
Yeah.
So, do a little private detective work and try to get in some other way.
Yeah. I think that was a terrific answer. We have another question from Tom. I'll paste it here so you also see it. You mentioned using fresh eyes as a superpower. How
Yes.
can you be assured that this superpower isn't dismissed due to perceived lack of experience?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, well, it depends on the culture sometimes. I mean, I think if you're humble and you're not arrogant, I think sometimes when you present yourself as someone who's genuinely curious, and researchers, that's how we're built. We're curious people, but we present ourselves in a way that say, "Hey, I'm the new person," and when you're giving feedback, like all those examples that I was saying, hey, ask the right question. You know, I didn't say go in with fire, going in and blasting doors open, flipping tables. Hey, I got a question. Why do we do things this way? No, 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 no. That's not the way. If you are appropriately presenting yourself with curiosity and intrigue, people accept that. And they'll say, they say, hey, look, we've answered that question before, and here's, and they'll be able to tell you if it's a true, genuine query. So I would say bring those fresh eyes, but be humble in your approach. Um, Go in, if you go in with a question, go in with the thought, even the hypothesis you have might be wrong. That's what a hypothesis is. It's just something that you want to prove right or wrong. So you go in with that positioning for yourself, and you'll gain that trust. You'll gain that credibility,
Mhm.
especially if you start working on something early. That's how you build trust. Remember, I said don't wait. Just dive into a project, because then if you're working with a PM, who may even be skeptical, once they see you digging in and getting into the trenches, even when you don't have all the information, ooh, that builds trust. They go, wow, this person is digging in even when they don't have all the information, and they're doing it the right way. They're not being
Mhm.
arrogant about it. They're not like, oh, I'm coming in here with all these ideas from the other company. I know what to do. No, 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 no. You're coming in asking questions. You're coming
Yeah.
in being curious. That will, I think, help build that credibility and build strong relationships for you with
So
those fresh
focusing
eyes.
on focusing on the learning aspect rather than on the questioning aspect.
Absolutely. You have the question, but you're asking the question to learn.
Yeah.
You know,
Not
you know how
just to
some people ask,
question the establishment.
right. You know how some people ask questions, and they're asking questions they ask it as a statement. you know, it's as if, oh, I'm asking this question, but I already know the answer to it.
Yeah.
Don't
This
do that.
question comes with an answer.
Exactly. Don't approach it that way. Not a good look.
Okay, so we also received a few questions on the topic of demonstrating the value and the ROI to the stakeholders and how to approach this. What are some percentages, maybe a monetary value to use this, and how basically how can a researcher learn how to speak with the business language that you mentioned?
As I said before, you interview your stakeholders. You set up one-on-one meetings, especially if you're in a product development organization. or even if you're in market research or in some other type of arrangement, you set up consistent cadences with the people who you are mostly working with. Over time, that consistency, you're asking questions, and imagine, over 2 or 3 months, every week, you're talking shop basically, and you're asking questions each moment. You're exchanging documents. You are maybe you see them in another meeting, and maybe if you're in person, man, so many people are work remote these days. But if you're in person, then you can go to lunch, and you can have some sidebar meetups and just say, hey, I was listening to something in the meeting that I don't quite understand, and maybe it's a business terminology. Can you help me understand that a little bit better? I think that's what helps. I think, again, we're going back to relationships. It sounds simple, sounds like, oh yeah, that's but it's not. It shouldn't surprise you. When you build relationships, you're able to learn faster. I mean, you can watch all the YouTube videos you want, but sometimes it someone really you're sometimes when you connect with someone and they share information with you firsthand from their mouths, you have a tendency to learn a little bit better. So I think you learn the business that way. Read. If that company, like what I used to do is, like, whenever there was a company, um, and a book was written about the company from, say, one of the founders, I'd read the book. It doesn't, it's just one way to just learn how that company started.
Yeah.
Especially startup companies tend to, their founders tend to write books, but audio books, research articles. Uh, Try to find information from people in the know, people who work there, who might have an interesting perspective, who aren't just sort of sharing the company line on things. People who maybe are work on the fringes, get their perspective, and you can build a catalog of information to then digest and um, you know figure out how you um, figure out what you want to retain, what you're going to use, as you start getting more into your project work.
Yeah. Now a little bit of a question regarding your own journey.
Mhm.
Who has helped you as a researcher in your company to excel in your role?
I think there's always someone at every company that I've worked. I can identify, and I'm not going to name names, name them, just protect their privacy. But I've had former managers, I've had former peers. I think, at Zendesk right now, I have some really strong relationships with my colleagues. I've been there 3.5 years now. So I have peers who challenge me, and we get into really good conversations about the work or just about how a process or something like that. But I think, I recall a manager uh, when I was at Twitter, who was extremely influential in how I think about teams and structuring work and aligning work to the company priorities. So every company that I've worked for over my career, I've taken something from that experience working with a manager, and have been able to utilize it in other areas. So yeah, so every company, I always identify people. I build relationships with people, and that's what you do. You don't want to work for a company and you're just walking in one door, walking it out, and not really building relationships and people that you want to learn from. And that's I think is a criteria for the types of jobs you want to seek. It's like, go to places that you think you can learn from and advance your understanding of the world or a business area. And I think that's how you're going to be able to sustain a career and be able to do all the pivoting and transitioning from industry to industry, because now you've built up a nice library of information to help you transition into new spaces when you do.
Great. And we have one last question before we move to the final slides.
Okay.
Um, I find the ability to simplify my points and research results immensely helpful when trying to translate what I want to say. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it? They're having trouble doing that?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
that the person who asked this question just finds this ability immensely helpful, and if you agree with this, basically.
Oh, 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 were they referencing the talk and then
Yeah, yeah.
oh, yeah, oh, absolutely. Like, I think the translation piece, I've never shared this in a in a presentation before until I started gathering information from all those researchers I was telling you about, especially Theo. And it's and I realized over my career that I was doing it and didn't know that I was doing it. But somebody shared a piece of advice with me long time ago that I needed to understand how a company made the money. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like going on 15 years ago. Somebody told me that. And so I understood sort of the business piece. But then another piece of advice I got was someone said, Reggie, tell the story. Tell a story that lands. And if I'm talking to the CEO, I'm telling it differently than when I'm talking to a product manager or someone else. And as you grow in your career and you do it more times, it just becomes natural. You know how to, some people call it code switching. Um, you know how to, you know, speak a different language. It's almost like going into a new country, and let's say you speak English, and then you go to Spain. It's like, oh yeah, I've got to, you speak Spanish, or go to Portugal, speak Portuguese. You're learning that language, and you're going into that environment, and you're doing, and you're speaking the language that the person that you're working with speaks. It gets easier as you grow in your career. So if whoever asked that or made that statement, if they're a junior in your career, keep at it, keep doing it. It's you know even a year from now, you're going to be better at it the more you make the decision to do it and do it with intention.
Okay, so that would be the last question that we asked for today,
Okay.
and I believe Reggie, you have something special
Yes.
prepared.
Yeah. So I want to share a few more slides with everyone. Now, as I said, the message that I want you to take away from the day is that, you know, everyone on this webinar already has what it takes. You're already a researcher, you already are successful. You have the skills, your curiosity and all the ability to connect the dots that others miss. Right now you're building blocks of being of a successful research career. So now the question is like, what's going to be your next move? Uh, in order to help the UX research community do this, my colleague and I built UXR.design. Go to this website, check it out. This website has highly curated articles. I have about 100 articles on there. They're highly curated from research professionals just like yourself, talking about their expertise with journey mapping, creating a research portfolio. But I also have folks who share their transition stories. So if you're in the middle of a transition, thinking about a transition, go to UXR.design and go to the link where we're showcasing career switchers or people or stories. I have stories about folks who have transitioned in their careers. I even have Theo's article posted here on this website. You'll find these career switcher stories from folks who've made the leap, like from brain science to UX, or from from academia into tech. And they share their roadmaps. They share exactly how they did it. And here are some of the articles that you'll find there. And I believe that at the end of the day, that researchers, our skills can travel. We can thrive anywhere. You don't have to follow a linear path. And you may not have all the right answers as you step in, and you may not all have all the right answers right now. You just have to be able to take that leap. And so the UXR.design website, I built that just so, for folks who are trying to take another leap, explore those resources. Also share your story. If you have a story of transition that you've written about, send me a note, and we'll post it. But what I want you to make sure you do is find resources that are going to help you get to the next level. So I really appreciate the opportunity from UX Tweak to share these ideas today. There's my email address. I'm also on LinkedIn, obviously. So connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn, and let's have a conversation. And I'm happy to connect with you.
Okay, Reggie, thank you for sharing these great resources with our viewers today. Um, we are slowly uh, approaching the end of the
Okay.
webinar. So, if you have any last words, or if you have anything going on other than the UX or design that you would like to share with the people, feel free to do so.
Oh, well, I should mention that the UX research team is hiring a UX researcher to be based in Lisbon, Portugal. So we're interested in recommendations or folks who are based in that area of the world. So if you have any recommendations, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to speak with you.
Okay, so thank you again, Reggie, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone who joined and watched the webinar. You provided great questions, and I think that this webinar could be immensely helpful for basically anyone. So thank
Thank
you
you.
again, Reggie.
All right.
And people keep posted about our next webinar. We will share the more details later on our socials as per usual. So thank you again for joining us. Have a lovely remainder of your day. Bye, everybody.